I'll start a new topic now, which will deal with the rotational motion of basically extended objects or rigid bodies, right? So far what we have done is we have discussed motion, which is normally described as a translation, right? Because either we were interested in motion along a fixed direction, right? Or even if we were considering motion in 2 or 3 dimensions, we were still interested in motion of the point particles, and which we very suitably or very conveniently took the center of mass as describing motion of the entire object for extended objects, right? So this kind of motion is then termed as translation. Okay, and now what happens is in nature, so normally we are going to deal with extended objects, right? Where the motion of the center of mass is there. However, along with that, the other parts of the object, right? So it's not the center of mass which is moving, but the other parts of the object are also making, changing their position, right? And in particular, we are more interested in the orientation, right? So the relative change in position of these different parts of the object with respect to certain origin or certain reference point, and we'll see that in many cases that reference point is our center of mass, right? Okay, so that way general motion of an object will be described as translation plus a rotation. Now again, this rotation could be rotation of the entire object, right? So keeping the orientation same, right? Or it could be changing the orientation of the body along with translation of the center of mass. Now what we have done is we discussed this translation motion or translational motion in terms of, well, mainly 2 physical quantities, momentum and force, right? So the momentum was characteristic of or representative of the amount of motion, as we usually call it, in the system, right? So the state of the system, and the force, and we also discussed this, that it will be the external force which is going to lead to the change in momentum. So it's the external force which then leads to evolution of the state of the system, right? So similarly, what we'll do is describe rotational motion. We will discuss some analogous quantities which are more appropriate to describe rotation here, right? And for the time being, so in that case what we'll do is just to differentiate this momentum and force between translation and rotation. Force remains as it is, there is not much difference. Momentum, now we'll start calling this as linear momentum. So the momentum that we have considered so far, which is represented as P equal to mv, is then basically our linear momentum, and we'll have some kind of rotational momentum associated with the change in orientation of the particular object, right? Okay. Another thing, before moving on to the details of this, another thing that we should always keep in mind is that the analysis that we are going to discuss henceforth is going to be strictly valid for rigid bodies. And what are rigid bodies? So we all have some feel for rigid bodies. However, if I want to give it a definition, or if I want to define it in terms of words, then we can say that it's a collection of particles, right, which are again point particles, so that we can apply our Newton's equation of motion or other laws that we have discovered so far appropriately. So it's a collection of particles, right, whose relative position vector with respect to each other, right, is a fixed quantity and does not change due to the applied external force. Right? So the applied external force can change the entire state of the object, but not the relative position vectors between the parts of the object. So the applied force, and hence the motion that is resultant of this applied force, right? So such objects will be considered as rigid bodies, and we have numerous examples of that, right, in our daily life. For example, a steel rod remains a steel rod of a fixed length, fixed weight, fixed dimensions, right? But it can undergo rotational motion, translational motion, and other things, right? We'll also see, and this is something that one should try to appreciate, is that while discussing this translation or linear motion, what we did was, depending on the particular problem, we very conveniently either discuss the problem in 1 dimension, 2 dimension or 3 dimensions, right? So we tried to find the symmetry in the system, we tried to find which particular, if the evolution is taking place only along one coordinate axis, and then discuss the entire problem in that coordinate axis. So although this quantity, momentum and force were described as proper 3-dimensional vectors, it was not always necessary to consider the vector nature of these. In fact, if the problem could be solved in 1 dimension, then it's as good as normal magnitude, normal quantities with simple magnitude, right? However, what we'll see very soon is that rotation, on the other hand, necessarily needs 3 dimensions to describe it fully, right? So we'll see with these examples, and then you can try to appreciate it, that to describe any kind of rotation, we necessarily need about all the 3 dimensions to discuss the evolution of that particular system. Okay. So with that, let us start this topic. And the first thing that we are going to discuss here or describe here is something called angular momentum. Right? And then this is analogous to the linear momentum in case of translation motion. So this is a rotation momentum that we are going to discuss, or we are going to define. And as a convention, this will be represented as capital L, right, with a vector sign. So this is a vector quantity. It's a momentum. It describes momentum. So it's a vector quantity, just like the linear momentum, and it will be described as this symbol L, right, the letter L, right. And what is the definition of this, or how do we calculate it? So L is described as R cross P. Okay? So it's a vector quantity which is derived by taking a cross product. So the vector cross product between two vector quantities. One is the position vector of the object, okay, or the point whose angular momentum we want to consider, and momentum of that object or that point, right? So this is a physical quantity which is basically cross product of two other physical entities, right? So in fact, many times what will happen is, this will be the first physical quantity you will encounter which is actually a cross product of two other physical quantities, right? However, that is not exactly true. In fact, we all have done the problems of circular motion, and if you recall, we normally write the velocity as omega r, right? And this can be generalized as the velocity vector is actually omega cross r, where omega is the angular velocity. So this is angular velocity vector, right? And in the next examples, I'll show you what is the direction of the angular velocity vector and the position vector r. Of course, there is more to this than simply saying that this is the angular velocity, which is then the rate of change of the angle. It's a very special vector, and we will discuss this in slightly more detail in later lectures, right? However, it's important to start understanding this. It's important to understand that in general the velocity is described as omega cross r in case of that circular motion or the rotational motion. So omega cross r, and in particular cases, so particularly in two-dimensional systems, we can get this in terms of, and anyway, this is the magnitude of then this velocity vector. Okay, so we'll come back to it. We'll use it appropriately where we need it. Right. Okay. So once we have defined the angular momentum, right? Now what we can do is we can try to calculate it from some simple systems, right? So now how do we do that? So for example, let us define our coordinate axis, right? And in this case, I am going to describe it in a slightly different way. Right? So x, this is my y, and this is my z. So I am still holding on to that right hand convention. So x axis, y axis. So now the y axis is basically going in the plane of the board. Right? So it's pointing inwards. This is my origin, and then the z axis is the vertical direction. Right? So the convention is fine. This is let's say my coordinate axis and coordinate space, and let us say a particle makes some kind of a motion which looks something like this. So let's say it's going like this, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. We can take any given path. So let's say it goes like this, and now at any instant, right, we need to find what its angular momentum. Okay. So now what do we have? So with respect to this origin, this is the position vector of the particle at that instant. Right? What is the velocity? The velocity is going to be in the direction of the change of r. So at this point, this will be simply tangential to this one, right? And now let's be careful. Even if I draw it like this, one has to anyway. So let me try to make it slightly more explicit, in the sense that let us say that the xy coordinates on a plane described by x and y coordinate axis is represented with this blue chalk, and the z axis, which is vertical, is the white one. The particle makes a motion in x and y. So this is the motion of the particle, this is the path of the particle. Let's say it goes from a point A to a point B. At any instant, this is the position vector of the particle. At this point, this is the velocity of the particle, or the velocity vector, and this v lies in this xy plane, with the particle making motion in the xy plane, right? So then the angular momentum is described as this, right? So r cross p, which is basically r cross mv, right? Because we know that linear momentum is described as mv. Okay, so we need r and we need v, and now this is my angular momentum. And what I get, first of all, what I can do is I can calculate the magnitude of this angular momentum, and this is going to be r cross v. So you can see that in this case r and v, so of course it's going to be mod of r, and we'll take m here, mod of v, and then sine of theta, right, where theta is the angle between r and v. If theta tends to be 90 degree, which is the case which we discussed mostly as the circular motion, then it's simply mrv, right? And then we take v as omega, so this r omega, so this becomes mr square omega, your standard result, right? Anyway, so this is the case, right? So this is my magnitude of angular momentum, right? And then what is its direction? So for that we have to find this vector quantity, and we can do that also. So we can try to find it, and we know how to do this cross product. So I cap, j cap, k cap, r, which in general will be x, y, z, but if we choose the system properly, appropriately, we can write, in this particular case, we can write this as xy0, because motion is confined in xy plane. Similarly, my v will be vx, vy0, right? And now we can solve this to get the value of, so the general angular momentum L about origin O, right? So it's very important that the angular momentum is described about this origin O, right? So that's the so that is the definition of angular momentum. And for this particular system, if we try to let's say kind of calculate this, right, then what we'll see is we can get this determinant out. So we get I cap 0 minus 0, 0 plus j cap 0 minus 0 plus k cap, which is x vy minus y vx, or it only has one component, k cap. So this is L. Right? So what we have seen is, if the motion is confined in x and y plane, right? As for this particular general case, we are not describing how this path is taking. What is this particular path? It could be a circle, it could be a parabola, it could be any random path. Doesn't matter. The angular momentum with L bar is only in case of in that case the angular momentum is only confined into these in the z direction or in the k cap direction, right? And that will be the direction of this. So its magnitude is this, and direction will be, in this particular case, will then be k cap. But in general, we'll have to find out the direction of angular momentum looking at all the components. Right now only z component is there, but otherwise we'll have to get this here by solving this determinant. And what we can also say here now is that in this particular case, this is just L of z, or the z component of angular momentum. Okay. Now, once we have done this, we can describe another important property of angular momentum. And I'll state it this way, that linear momentum, as we know from its definition, is independent of points of origin, right? However, angular momentum is not. So this is a very important statement, because in different systems, now it doesn't matter which way you look when we are calculating linear momentum. So just a translation of the origin. We are not talking about the relative motion between two coordinate systems, just the translation of origin. However, the angular momentum will change. So the quantity that we are calculating, or even not only its magnitude, its vector nature itself can change depending on your reference point. Right? Okay. So it's a very important statement, and before taking examples about this, we can prove it for a general sense. So let's say, what is my linear momentum? So first of all, let's describe a general system, and now I can go x, y, z. Right? So let us say there's a particle here whose it's about origin O, whose position vector is r. At this point, let us say it has a momentum p in this direction, right? So that's the direction of momentum p. Linear momentum is p is equal to m r dot, right, in O. Let me take another coordinate system, equivalent coordinate system. So again, x prime, y prime, z prime, O prime, where the origin O prime is shifted by some amount and from O, and that is represented by this vector r. Right. So let's say r. However, this is a constant. So I'll write this as a constant vector. Constant right? And now, with respect to this O prime, we can again find out a position vector which we'll now call R prime to this point, right? And consequently, we can find out its, so let's say P prime, its linear momentum, which is then mr prime dot, right, in O prime. Okay? Okay. Now, how the position vectors are related? We know, we can see from the law of vector addition is that now given R prime is R plus R vector, right? So this implies R prime dot is going to be equal to R dot plus time derivative of this, which is 0, right? Because we said that there is a constant difference. It's just separated by a constant amount, right? So 0, so which is basically then saying that R prime dot is same as R dot, and if that is the case, then we can write down P prime is equal to M R prime dot is equal to M R dot, which is then equal to P. Okay? So the linear momentum is independent of choice of origin in any coordinate system. Okay? What about angular momentum in this particular case? Now angular momentum is L, so about O is then R cross mr dot, definition of the angular momentum, so about origin O, and L prime is R prime cos mr dot prime about O prime, right? We can use the same relation between the position vectors here. So this can be then written as R prime cross M R dot, right, or R plus R cross M R dot, and it's simple algebra, but it helps to go through it once. So this will be then R cross M R dot plus R cross M R dot. This is nothing but angular momentum about O plus some extra quantity, which is R cross M R dot. Right? So, idea is to show that L prime is not equal to L. So, although P prime is equal to P, doesn't matter what is the choice of a coordinate origin, L prime is then not equal to L. It has an additional factor, and since this is again a vector quantity, it's a different vector, right? It's not even in the direction of the original vector L. It's not just that the magnitude is changing, it's just a different vector, it's a very different quantity, and that means perspective plays a role, an important role here.